Hey library friends, it's Miss Abby. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a regular old composition notebook into an enchantment and spell book. Let's get started. Here I've got my supplies. I found this really cool little mini composition notebook that I thought would be excellent for showing you how to do this, but you can use a full-size one. You also need a tea bag, a marker or pen of some kind, some glue, a scissors, and a paper bag like from a grocery store. So to start, we're going to trace the outside shape of our notebook. Now you're going to trace the bottom. You can just trace around the outside of it. It's not too bad. Then we're going to flip it over, make sure you have enough room for the spine, and trace the front cover too. I'm going all around just like I did with the bottom cover. And then I'm going to connect it. And see how it'll fit really nicely right on there. Then go ahead and cut those out. So here's my shape. And we have to make this paper look like old leather. So what I'm going to have you do is crumple it up. Crumple, crumple, crumple. Be careful not to tear it. And the other thing that you're going to do is you're going to rub it together. I'm going to show you a speeded up version of this. I don't have to make that noise. So you can see it gets kind of suede-y. You might see some particles go up in the air, but it's safe. It's okay. Now we've got to tea stain this paper because it's a little bit too light to be leather. So yeah, let's go ahead and get some hot water. Ask a grown-up for help. Make sure you know what you're doing. Stick that tea bag in your boiling hot water. And then you wait. You gotta let it steep in the water so that you can get some nice tea. Now this part you have to be careful. Pull your tea bag out. And you don't want it to be soaking wet, so you want to squeeze it out a little bit. Get some of that water out. And then you're going to rub it right onto your paper. And do you see how the paper is getting a little darker? Not only is it getting darker because it's wet, that would happen, but it's also leaving a little bit of the tea color behind, which is what we want. You gotta let it dry, so this takes a little time. And then once it's nice and dry, get your glue, and you're gonna go real hard with the glue on this. Go all the way to the corners. I would avoid that cloth binding on the edge there, just because we want that part to still be flexible. Really glob that glue on. Make sure you get it all the way out to the edges. And then line it up on top of your notebook. Line up your paper and press down really nice and hard. You want it to stay there and not budge. We got to do it to the other side too. So flip it over and go real heavy with the glue. Now you could use wet glue too. You could use like white school glue instead of using a glue stick. That actually might be a little bit easier because then you can spread it out with your fingers or a paintbrush and be really careful. Make sure when you're done you put that cap back on. Then once again, don't overshoot it. You're going to match it up to the edge and the corners and press down really nice and hard. And see how there's still a little wiggle room in the binding right there so that when you open it up, it falls open nicely, like a book jacket. All right, then we got to let this one dry too. A lot of waiting for things to dry during this activity. But you're a patient kid, you can handle it. All right, once that's dry, we're gonna dry brush some color onto it. I have the same raw umber color that I used for our wands. And I'm gonna, whoa. Oh, come on. Oh boy. Oh, there we go. Okay, got it. We're going to dry brush this onto the cover. Now remember, dry brushing, you're using just your dry brush and a little bit of paint. You don't want it to be too heavy because you're not trying to really cover it. You're just trying to make it look older and age it. So that dry brushing technique will really hit all those crumples from when we wrinkled the paper up. And you're going to want to go ahead and you're going to do both sides of this. But right now I'm just showing you this one side. Get all the way to the edges. And if you get any spots where it's a little bit too thick, don't worry about it too much. We're going to hit this again with some tea water, and that's going to spread out that paint. Alternatively, you could use watercolor paint on this if you had, you could use any color watercolor, but if you had brown watercolor paint, or if you mix together a bunch of different watercolors, that will really help out with this step too. All right, now we're going to use that same tea water again. I hope you're not going to drink that water because it's going to get some paintbrush in it. And we're going to brush that onto the cover where we've put our paint. That'll help spread out some of those, like I said, some of those areas where the paint may be a little bit heavier than you want it to be. But it also just gives it another chance to get that tea-stained, aged look that we're looking for. It gives it a more natural leather look. Now you might be saying to me, Miss Abby, what if I just have some scraps of leather around and I want to do this thing? Sure, go for it. Then you don't have to do all this extra aging stuff. But I don't know about you, I don't have a lot of scraps of leather at my house. So this is a fun way. And usually, if you go to the grocery store and you have some paper bags from that, if you don't recycle them right away, then you can use them for crafts. I want my spell book to have a little label on the front, give it the title. So I'm going to tea stain a piece of paper that I cut to kind of look like a fancy design. Oh boy, can't see it, sorry. So we're just going to tea stain this paper using that same exact tea that we had. My tea bag broke, otherwise I would be brushing it on with that. And then we're going to let that dry too. Now that the front is dry, then we're going to do the back. So we're going to dry brush onto the back, just like we did on the front. And tea stain that as well. And now, when you're doing this, you don't want it to get too wet because you have your notebook, which is made out of paper, and if it gets too soaking wet, it's going to warp. So actually, I can tell you a neat trick that you'll probably want to use as it starts to get drier. You're definitely going to want to sandwich the edge of it where it opens between some heavy objects, just so that it stays nice and flat. Now we have this nice and dry, so it's ready for us to apply our title. But I want to write something in a fancy font. Now this is my spell book, so I'm going to carefully write out spells. And if if you don't want to have to write it yourself, you can always find fonts on your computer and print those out and then tea stain that paper. That's an easy option too. I really like to kind of draw my own fonts, so I practiced on another piece of paper, and I'm using pencil to start because if I make a mistake, then I can just erase my mistake. And once I'm all done writing spells here, then I will use, I thought it would look good in green, so I grabbed a green marker and I will write it out or trace over what I wrote with my green marker. And the way that I found this font was I just kind of Googled magic font. And I found one that I thought looked really cool, that I thought would look really nice on the front of a spell book. There are a lot of fonts on your computer if you have a computer that you can look into your Microsoft Word fonts and use some of those. But this one was a free font you could download. I thought it would look nice. So now I'm really carefully tracing my letters and making some areas thicker than others, coloring those ones in. And you're writing spells on the front of this, but you can put anything inside of this notebook. It's your notebook. It can be a journal. You can do your math inside of it. You can practice your handwriting inside of it. It's really important to kind of write down your thoughts and stuff. That helps you, think stuff out. All right, now that everything is super dry, I'm going to glue my title onto my cover. Get that really nice and gluey. And kind of carefully center it where I want it and press it into place. And there you have it, our Spells and Enchantments book. Thanks for watching.